Have you ever arrived somewhere and realized you don't remember how you got there? You stopped at lights, changed lanes, took every turn, but your mind was somewhere else. That's not forgetfulness, that's autopilot. And it doesn't just happen when you're driving. It happens when you brush your teeth, respond to someone without thinking, go through a whole day only to wonder where it went. Most of us are living like this, not because we're broken, but because our brains think it's helping. The problem? That kind of help comes at a cost. Welcome to Brain Scribbles, where we explore the hidden systems behind how you think, feel, and live. Today we're talking about mental autopilot, why it takes over, and how to take the controls back. So what exactly is autopilot? In neuroscience, it's tied to something called the default mode network, a system in your brain that kicks in when your focus drifts away from the outside world. It turns on when you're daydreaming, reliving a memory, planning what to say later, or just brushing your teeth without really thinking. In those moments, your body keeps moving, but your mind steps out of the room. It's like shifting into a quiet background mode, still awake, but not really present. And here's the thing, your brain prefers it that way. It's always looking for ways to save energy. So the more often you do something, walking the same route, tapping the same app, answering the same way, the faster your brain automates it. This isn't a bug, it's a survival feature. By turning repeated actions into reflexes, your brain frees up attention for anything new or urgent. But that efficiency has a downside, because once your brain labels something as routine, it starts tuning it out. Not just the motion, but the experience itself, the textures, the emotions, the meaning. All of it fades into the background. And pretty soon, your days stop standing out. Not because nothing happened, but because your brain stopped paying attention. Living on autopilot doesn't feel dramatic, it feels subtle, like drifting through your life with the volume turned down. The days blur, routines repeat, and your choices start to feel less like decisions and more like defaults. You scroll without meaning to. You eat when you're not hungry. You answer questions before you realize they were asked. You're not unhappy, you're just not present. The brain runs its patterns, and somewhere along the way, you stop checking in. Even your emotions flatten. The good moments don't hit as hard. The bad ones pass without processing. Everything feels muted, like someone dimmed the lights and you forgot they were ever brighter. This is what autopilot does. Not all at once, but gradually. It replaces awareness with repetition, connection with habit, and before long you're living days you don't remember, in a life that feels strangely distant from your own. So why does this happen? Why would your brain choose to check out when you're trying to live a full, meaningful life? The answer is surprisingly simple. Your brain isn't designed for depth. It's designed for efficiency. Every second of every day, your brain is managing a storm of information. Sights, sounds, smells, body signals, decisions, emotions, all competing for limited attention. And attention is expensive. It takes energy, it takes focus, it slows you down. So your brain does what any good manager would do. It automates what it can. Repeated tasks? Automated. Predictable routines? Automated. Emotional responses to familiar situations? Automated. Not because your brain is lazy, but because it's trying to protect your bandwidth. It wants to free up mental resources for anything urgent, new, or dangerous. That's why it sharpens your focus when you're learning something new, or when you're in danger, or when you're emotionally charged. But the rest of the time, it defaults to the path of least resistance, a kind of internal shortcut system. And in modern life, that shortcut system gets overused because most of what we do each day looks familiar. We wake up in the same bed, scroll the same apps, see the same faces, have the same conversations. And when nothing demands your full attention, your brain assumes it's safe to switch to cruise control. That's how autopilot becomes the default setting. Not because you're disinterested in life, but because your brain is trying to conserve energy in a world that never stops demanding it. But here's the irony. The more efficient your brain gets, the less alive you start to feel. Because presence is inefficient. Awareness takes effort. And meaning, it only shows up when you're paying attention. So how do you know if you're stuck in autopilot? Because the tricky part is, it doesn't always feel like something's wrong. It feels normal. It feels routine. It feels like life is just happening. But there are signs, little patterns that give it away. You find yourself forgetting what you just read, or walking into a room and not knowing why. You check your phone without realizing you're holding it, or rewatch the same shows. Not for enjoyment, but because choosing something new feels exhausting. You say, "I'm fine" by default, even when you're not sure how you actually feel. You go through your day without any moment that truly stands out. And when it ends, you can't really say what made it different from the day before. You might feel busy, but strangely detached. Productive, but unfulfilled. Like you're completing tasks without actually participating in your own life. And maybe the scariest part? You're not even sure when it started. That's the nature of autopilot. It doesn't crash into your life. It slowly replaces it. Living on autopilot doesn't just make life feel repetitive, it disconnects you from yourself. Because when your actions are automatic, your thoughts become automatic too. You stop asking questions. You stop checking in. You stop wondering if this version of your life is really yours, or just the path of least resistance. Over time, your identity starts to blur. You're doing what you've always done, but not because it still excites you, not because it still fits, just because it's what you're used to. And when you stop engaging with your own life, you start to feel like a stranger in it. The spark fades, the curiosity fades, even the joy starts to feel muted. And eventually, you don't just lose track of time, you lose track of meaning. Because meaning doesn't live in the routine. It lives in the reflection, the intention, the moments where you pause long enough to ask, is this still who I want to be? And if you never pause, you never ask. And if you never ask, you never grow. Autopilot keeps you alive, but it doesn't help you become. The good news? You don't need to quit your job, move to a new city, or reinvent your entire life to break out of autopilot. You just need to interrupt the loop, and that starts with awareness. Not a dramatic change, but a moment of noticing when you're drifting, when your mind is gone but your body is still moving, when you're halfway through the day and can't remember how it started. The first step isn't action, it's attention. And once you start paying attention, you can start making choices again. Try this. Take a different route home, even if it's slower. Drink your morning coffee without checking your phone. Sit in silence for 2 minutes. Not to meditate, not to be productive, just to be. Notice the way light moves across your room, the way your hands feel when you wash them, the way your voice sounds when you say something honest. These are small things, but they send a loud signal to your brain. This moment matters, and that signal breaks the cycle. It wakes up the parts of you that have been dozing off through repetition. It reintroduces color into a grayscale routine. It reminds you that you're here, and this is now, not a rerun of yesterday. Because presence is a skill, and like any skill, it gets sharper with use. You don't need to be mindful every second of the day, but you do need to show up for a few of them, especially the ones that feel easy to miss, because those are the moments that life is quietly made of. And the more of them you reclaim, the more your life starts to feel like something you're living, not just watching happen. The truth is, autopilot isn't a failure of focus. It's a survival feature, your brain's way of shielding you from overload by turning repetition into reflex. But when everything becomes reflex, you lose the feeling of choice. The days blur, the colors fade, and life starts to feel like something you're watching instead of something you're living, because it's not just what you do that shapes your life, it's how awake you are while doing it. Even the smallest shift in attention, a pause, a question, a breath, can turn a routine into a moment of clarity. You don't need a total reset. You just need to remember that you're still behind the wheel. Maybe that means setting your phone down and just looking out the window for no reason at all. Maybe it means doing something slowly, on purpose. Maybe it's just asking yourself, what's one thing today I don't want to miss? Because those are the moments that break the loop, that bring you back, that remind you this life, this one right here, is still yours. So if this gave you something to carry with you into the quieter parts of your day, go ahead and like the video. And if you want more ideas that help you slow down, think clearly, and live with more intention, subscribe for the next one. This is Brain Scribbles, slow thoughts, deep questions, and room to breathe.